Hi, John with Citizen Survival Plan here. When it comes to emergency preparedness and prepping for a grid down event, I think solar power is going to be your ticket, and here's why. A propane or a gas generator is a great way to make like short-term power when you need to power something really big, but for long-term stuff, we're going to want renewable energy sources for our long-term grid down situation. So the question that gets asked a lot is, how long can I run certain appliances off of my solar generators with panels and the battery packs? Well, we're going to go through it today. We're going to try and see how long we can actually power like a refrigerator or something. So in this video, we're going to go over understanding wattage hours, AC-DC conversion, examples of household appliances and the wattage they use, what to look for in a solar generator. What am I looking for? What features do I want it to have? We're going to talk about accessories that we want to have with the solar generator, like cables and stuff to run everything around the house that we want to power. And last, ultimately, how are we going to protect the solar generator from EMP and stuff, and kind of some ideas on how to store them. Okay, so let's try and understand watt hours and wattage and the AC-DC conversion. So let's say we have a 500 watt power station here, and I have a 250 watt appliance. Let's say it's my computer. My computer burns 250 watts when I'm gaming or whatever on it. In theory, it should run it 2 hours, right? You have 250 watts, you're burning 250 watts per hour. And we have 500 watts, so we would get 2 hours out of it. Not quite. You are converting DC to AC to run your computer, because your computer runs off AC power. So we're taking anywhere between a 10 or 20, maybe even more % loss. So in reality, if you have 500 watts, you'd only run a 250 watt appliance for maybe an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, depending on how good or bad the inverter can change that over to AC. Okay, so I want to do a brief demonstration on AC loss. So this fridge, this is a little mini fridge we have. It runs on AC or DC power. So we're going to plug it into AC first. This is like your normal house outlet that you would have. So when I turn this on, we're going to change this to AC and cool. Do I not have that on? There we go. So you're going to see this screen, and this number is going to settle. It's going to spike for a second. It's probably going to end up at about 49 watts. So this fridge is going to run, as it stands right now, probably about 20 hours on this. So yeah, it's going to settle just at about, yep, there we go, 49 watts. So we're running it off AC. So I have the AC inverter turned on. So we're losing a little bit of power, just transferring power from the battery, turning it into AC power. So let's do this again, but we're going to run it on DC. And this fridge does both. So that one ran, it idled at about 49 watts. So this is why I like having some of your emergency equipment to run on DC. This is going to run a lot longer on DC. See, we have 10 or 15% more energy now. So we're running at 39 watts. So we're going to run longer on DC because we're not transferring the power to AC from DC. Okay, so this settled down, and now we can run 31 hours as opposed to 21. So you get 10 additional hours if you run DC instead of turning your AC inverter on to run this fridge. So really good idea to have some appliances that you can plug in that'll run DC power. So how much power do we actually need for a grid down situation? For your big solar powered power station, I would say as much as you can afford. I would say a minimum is 1,800 watts to about 3,000. If you can afford one of those big 5,000 watt units, I would do it. I would say one big enough to kick your fridge on for a day, or 16 hours or something, and also one powerful enough to maybe even turn like a window air conditioning unit on those really hot days. If you just need to cool down for a little bit and you need to turn the air conditioner on and maybe drain the battery halfway down and just to cool off or something. So something big enough to do that where I can take it the next morning and just recharge it. So what do I look for in a solar generator? I'm going to want passive charging. This means when I have solar panels plugged in, my DC, my AC, and all the outlets can run as I'm charging it. A lot of the Rockpals stuff does not have that. There's some other brands that don't have it yet. Definitely passive charging on all the outlets, AC, DC, everything. I want the LiFePO4 batteries, the lithium iron phosphate batteries. They can typically, not every single one, but typically they go 3,500 charges, 100% to dead before you get 80% of that battery's capacity. So I could do that 3,500 times, and at that I'll still have 80% of the power that the thing came with. So really good batteries. Some of the Jackery stuff doesn't have that. I have a couple little Jackery stations and they're lithium ion, and it's like 800 recharges to 80%. So the LiFePO4, the lithium iron phosphate batteries are going to be the best. A big one for us preppers, and other people might not think about this, but this is a big thing for me and for other appliances, but we run radios off of our little solar generators. And when you have an unregulated outlet, like the DC is just always on, and you plug a radio into it, what happens is the battery pack actually drains down as you're using it, and you're not getting the whole 12.6 or 13.2 volts that should be coming out of that. So your radio is going to diminish in power as it drains. So when you have a regulated one, it's one that you turn on. You have to hold the button, and then the little DC inverter or whatever kicks on, and that's the way we want to run those. And all of the outlets should be regulated like that. Well, the AC, of course, is going to be. A pure sine wave inverter. This way we can run sensitive electronics and anything we want off it. We don't have to worry about the actual generator damaging something we're plugging into if it's too sensitive. So this is why we want a regulated DC outlet. So this thing is running about 80%. I got 80% power on here. I'm going to turn the DC outlet on. And this is mostly for running radios, but even though the batteries run down a little bit, we are still getting 13.2 volts on our radio. If I were to plug this in to the Rockpals, this is an unregulated DC outlet, meaning it's always on. I don't kick it on like I did on the Jackery. This one is run down to just about the same thing, 80%, and you're going to see that... You're going to see that this is not even going to give me 12 volts. I'm at 11.2 volts, even at 80%. So the further this goes down, the less and less power I'm going to get out of my DC outlets. So one thing to look at when you are actually purchasing a solar generator or a power station, whatever you want to call them, is sometimes they will list something as a 1500 watt power station, okay? And they are sometimes referring to the inverter on that. When you actually look at the battery pack, it might only be like 986 watts or something. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing your power station. We want as big as battery as we can get, so as much watt hours as possible. So when the grid goes down, how would we exactly use one of these large generators? What am I most concerned about? What do I really want to turn on with this thing? I would say your refrigerator. All the food you have frozen, like meat, ground beef, chicken, anything that's frozen in your freezer, we're going to want to buy time to maybe defrost that and keep the fridge running long enough that we could eat all of the food that's currently in our fridge and use all those resources before we start tapping into all of our freeze-dried canned food, whatever you got. It's going to buy us a lot of time. And I know it's not perfect, you might run out of power on one of these, because if the sun's not shining or something. And that's also why I like having a propane generator. First of all, the propane can store for a really, really long time. I don't have to worry about it like gas, but even if you have a gas one, we might want to turn the big generator on to charge our solar generator if the sun's not shining or something, to help aid keep the fridge running until we can eat everything out of that fridge. One thing to note is you might not be able to eat it all fast enough depending on how much food is stored up, but we're going to want to keep it on. We could also feed our neighbors, you know, as we're defrosting food and starting to prepare it and cook it as the grid is down. Your neighbors probably aren't as prepared as you, and we could actually feed them, because the food's going to go to waste anyways, right? You can keep your neighbors from, you know, completely attacking you or something, I guess, in this situation where you can start get rid of all that food. We don't want it to go to waste. So that's the big thing, is buying as much time as we possibly can. And one of these can really buy you a lot of time. With solar, I can, you know, keep it going for a pretty long time. Mine's a 2400 watt. I have the Opus 2400 watt. And I did a little experiment on it. I had it plugged in to the fridge for about 6 hours, and it used 25% of the power. So, and that's with us opening it up. That was during the day. We have a 4-year-old. She's always opening the freezer and fridge up, and so that was like worst case scenario. So I would say I could run the fridge. If you have a 2400 watt power station with no solar plugged into it whatsoever, and you're not recharging it, it'll run for a day. It'll keep 24 hours going. But during the day, we can throw our solar panels out and recharge it during the day. Yeah, so one thing to note also, if you have really old appliances, so we have a refrigerator that's probably from 2001. That's where I'm guessing it was made about. It was actually from when we were kids. My parents gave it to me, and it's still running. So, but it's wildly inefficient. So we plug the Opus 2400 watt generator into that fridge, and it spiked to 1600 watts when it first kicked on. And then it ran, I'm looking at my notes here, it ran either 500 or 250 watts at a time. So wildly inefficient. This is something to consider if you have really old appliances in your house. If you are going to run a fridge like that and you bought one of these solar, like plug it in and see how much wattage it actually uses, because that old stuff is wildly inefficient. A good thing to also run once you run out your big fridge and you're just not using it anymore because the grid's been down for like, I don't know, a week, 2, 3, maybe a month at this point, is a DC fridge that runs off DC power that I can plug into like the car outlet on our power station. It's going to use a lot less power, and you could keep that running forever. Even if you had a couple days and no sun, I mean, you could keep it running for a really, really long time. There's a bunch of them out there. There's one that's in my video today. It's just a little one. It uses like 39 watts. It's like nothing. But you can get like the coolers that have the backup battery packs and stuff. As long as they run off DC power, I would maybe buy one of those to plug into your solar power station for sure. So I also like to have a couple like smaller to medium sized power stations, the 250 watt or maybe like a 500 or even up to a 600, something that's a little bit more mobile that we can move around in case I need to set up a base station radio somewhere else, like a couple miles out where the handhelds aren't reaching. These are going to be really good. Also, because they're just portable. If you need to bring a little bit of power with you somewhere, maybe if you're trying to pump water out of a creek, you need to turn on like a little mini water pump or something, just to get water into containers or something. This would be nice to have. It can be used for a lot of different things. These are just some examples. It's nice for turning on lights. If you just like are, you know, in your house at night and all the power's out and you just want to turn like a little light on. One thing to note is those old incandescent bulbs, those 60 watt incandescent bulbs, we still have some. And if you have those in your house and you want to plug a lamp or something on, they are wildly inefficient. It's 60 watts, so you have a 500 watt power station. It's not even going to light. It's not even going to light it up your, what you want to light up for very long. It's going to burn it up. Go make sure you have some LED bulbs. They use like 5 watts and they put out basically the same amount of light. So definitely consider that. We don't want to be burning up through our power stations with inefficient lights and stuff. Okay, these two accessories are 100% necessary to have. Depending on whether you have like the little barrel plug or an Anderson connector on your solar panel, you're going to want to get extension cables for your solar panel. Not like an extension, well, we want those too, but I'm going to get into that in a sec. The extension cables for your solar panels. So I want to set my power station inside the house, and I want to run the solar out. So out through windows, the line can go, or if things are really gotten bad, I'm just going to drill a hole in a door or something and run the line out. But we're going to want the like 30-foot extender cables so I could set the panels outside and run it inside. The cables on those solar panels are sometimes really short, and they have to be like right next to your power station. You don't want that. Definitely get some long cables. Also, again, extension cords, some with like the 3 slots at the end. That way I can run them through the house and kind of turn on what I want. I know there's going to be cables running all over your house, but I mean, this is a critical emergency. We want to run power. So we're going to run extension cables throughout the house doing this. One other thing I want to bring up, and this is getting into EMP protection. If you have a backup power station that is a UPS, an uninterruptible power source, I don't like these for emergencies and prepping, because if we ever were hit with an EMP, anything that's plugged into the grid is going to be fried. So if you have a UPS and you think you're going to be ready when something happens, if an EMP hits, I know that other things could cause the power to go out, but if an EMP were to hit, your backup power station is immediately fried right away. So just a side note. So again, with EMP proofing stuff, I get those big trash cans that are made of metal. I take the aluminum like ducting tape foil, and I kind of tape all the crevices down and whatnot, and I line them with cardboard. So my smaller things like my radios and my small little power stations and solar panels go in there, especially the radios. I even have some flashlights. I have a red dot in one that I want to make sure it doesn't get fried. The red dot thing, no, everyone kind of debates that. I don't know. So I just have a cheap one, red dot, stored in there. If you have a big generator, I know they make the big Faraday cages for those. They're super expensive. If you want to just get some protection for a generator, this isn't bad. This is a trap. It's from Faraday Defense. I have it upside down. I'm just trying to get the lettering on there. These plug into your AC. We also have these in our car, and I've seen a couple people that I trust recommend these, so it probably isn't as good as a Faraday cage, but I'll take some protection over none, right? Also with the radios are going to be your most sensitive. So a lot of my radio equipment is actually in Faraday bags in a Faraday cage, so kind of double protected up. The flashlights I kind of just have sitting in there. So just a note, we are going to want to do EMP protection. I have these plugged into all my generators, and me and my wife both have the traps plugged into our 12-volt sockets in our cars. I'll put that above too. My final thoughts on this is for power needs for total grid down failure for a long period of time. I'm going to want 1 or 2 small little solar generators, maybe a 300 and a 500. I'm going to want a big 1800 or 3000 watt solar generator with a bunch of panels. And I'm also going to definitely want to have I'm definitely going to want to have a propane or gasoline generator. I like propane, again, because I can store the fuel a really long time. Just on those dark days or when you're not getting a lot of light or whatever, we can kick that on for a little bit to, you know, maybe run the heater and charge our solar generators back up when it's not very light outside. Another thing to consider, and this is kind of at the end, if we were ever going to get hit with an EMP, all your appliances in your house are going to be fried, every one of them. So it might be a good idea to have just a cheap microwave, not connected to the grid, just stored in your house, along with a little bit of refrigeration. Like like I talked about earlier in the video, a little bit like a small DC 12-volt cooler or little mini fridge that runs off DC power that's not plugged into the grid anywhere. Yep, that's going to wrap it up for today. This is all things kind of considered for SHTF power needs and for when the power grid goes down. Thanks for watching.